I'm here with Joey Greany today. Joey, appreciate you coming on. Former Tampa Bay Rays strength and conditioning coach, been with the Royals prior to that, and working with a ton of youth athletes. So, Joey, I'm excited that we were connected and looking forward to chatting with you.
Joe, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and share some knowledge and wisdom with you today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, connected by Joe Guzman, who I think before that was through Ian Miller. He put me in touch with Joe. So it's funny just the connections that you end up making through doing these, and a lot of it overlaps. So yeah, I appreciate you, Joey. But yeah, man. So I was curious a little bit of your upbringing to start, because I know you did a little bit of martial arts growing up, if I'm not mistaken, as well as baseball. So if you could just share a little bit about that, I think it'd be cool to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, my father put my two brothers and my sister into Taekwondo classes. And the classes were 2 days a week for $2. And that was the best $2 ever spent. During that time, it was our introduction into strength training, into conditioning, into balance and mobility, all those aspects. But it also taught us the consistency, the discipline, the perseverance, the self-control behind being an elite athlete. And again, it was the best $2 ever spent. We learned so much, physical standpoint, but also on how to really take care of yourself and develop the necessary skills in order to continue your practicing and development. So I competed at a high level. I went to the Junior Olympic Games, the World Championships. So I was really involved in that. I really enjoyed baseball too. So I was kind of doing the martial arts and the baseball at the same time. I really enjoyed the training aspect behind things. How can I get stronger? How can I get a little bit faster? To win these tournaments when I was, competing in the martial arts. So I decided to go to school, study exercise science, physical education, and while I was at school, the day before graduation, Dr. Gregory, my academic advisor at the time, printed out the National Strength and Conditioning Association website. And he said, "Hey, look, you might want to look into doing something like this, for a living." And I had no idea about it. I thought I was just going to graduate college and be a gym teacher. But I remember walking back to my dorm room and reading the front page that he printed out, and I was like, what, this is what I want to do. I want to work with some of the best athletes in the world, and and help organizations and teams win championships. And get them stronger and more explosive. So I started studying for my exams, and then upon passing my certifications, I took a job in 2008 with the Kansas City Royals. I spent 9 seasons in the minor leagues at various different levels, worked with so many tremendous athletes and coaches from all around the world. And then in 2017, I transitioned into a major league role with the Tampa Bay Rays. And I was there for the last 8 seasons, again, working with some of the best coaches and athletes and staff members from around the world. So it's been an incredible experience, incredible ride. And, that's kind of how I got started and where I'm at today.
It's awesome. So you thought you were going to be a gym teacher at one point? Or that's what you wanted to be? I mean,
yeah, break out the basketballs and just let the kids, shoot some free throws. But yeah.
So you kind of blew past that one a little bit. Nothing against, being a gym teacher is great, but damn.
Yeah.
So the decision to go down the pro athlete route, with the Royals and the Rays versus maybe college or high school, was there anything behind that? I'm just curious why you went that route or went to pursue it.
Yeah. So at the time, the National Strength and Conditioning Association, they have a career resource center, and they post a number of job listings, a lot from NFL teams, NBA teams, MLB teams. I did apply to a few colleges and some of the Olympic teams that were available at the time. But I heard back from a few baseball teams. I think at that time, early 2000s, baseball was really pushing towards more strength training, more conditioning. And at that time, there were a lot of jobs available. And that's when I've heard back from the Kansas City Royals during that time. And the
Yeah.
next thing you know, I was on a flight to Surprise, Arizona for spring training.
It's great, man. That's awesome. So maybe if you could just share a little bit about the reality of like being in the minor leagues for that long, um, and just the grind of that, because a lot of people, so that's one thing I'm thinking about a little bit, is that a lot of people see what you're doing now and they think, all right, that's a sexy job, like you're working with professional athletes and everything, but they don't see what goes the decade, maybe 2 decades before that. Like talk about that grind that you're just going through every single day and probably not making a lot of money, probably on bus rides, that type of thing. Like what was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. And, everybody goes through it, whether you're a player, a coach, staff member, even umpires.
Mm-hmm.
It's a grind for everybody in the minor leagues. And I think it hasn't improved from when I started in the, in the early 2000s. But, it's long hours. You're not staying at the best hotels. The food is not the best. A lot of the times when you travel on bus rides, they're long trips, 7, 9 hours, sometimes 13 hours. And the only thing available is, a gas station, so you get off the bus, everybody kind of walks in half asleep, and you try to make the best decisions you can as far as nutrition goes, because, the next day you got to be on your game. I got to be on my game to coach. The players got to be on their game because they got to go out and compete. They don't want to stay in the minor leagues. They want to kind of move up the levels and make more money and to help support their families. So everybody's in the same boat. You all pull together, and you always look ahead and take one day at a time. But it is a grind, and that's where the martial arts background really helped me with the perseverance and the discipline and the consistency to really, when it does get tough, and you do feel like quitting and it gets frustrating at times, to really just remember why you're doing what you're doing. And and at that time, in the minor leagues, I felt like I had an impact not only on the players' performance, but also on their lives. And at that time, I was dealing with young players, from all around the world. But that's one thing too, is kind of remember, why you're doing what you're doing. And again, it's the performance aspect is one thing, but also you're in this to change lives as a coach.
Definitely, yeah, man. Did you have a family at that time?
I did not. No,
Okay.
I did not. I couldn't. Yeah, yeah. So I was, fresh out of school pretty much, and yeah, it was just me. And then I eventually met my wife, and then we didn't end up having our children until we got into the to the major league level with the Tampa Bay Rays in 2017, and 4 kids later. So, and a few more gray hairs. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I just plucked the first one of the first grays that I had out of my beard the other day, and I was like, all right, I'm not sure when that happened.
It comes on quick.
It does. But so in working with some of these big leaguers, I actually, not to put words in your mouth, but I've read or listened to you think I say like it's the boredom of consistency, right? Like some of those commonalities of those guys that just do it over and over and over again. Is that, maybe just elaborate on that a little bit? Like what are those top athletes doing? And if there's anything else that comes to mind, I'm curious, just from a performance aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So, yeah, like you said, embrace the boredom of consistency. And that's what the elite of the elite do. The best of the best at the top of their game. They embrace the boredom of consistency day in and day out. The training does get boring each and every day, but, in order to perform at your best, to play at your best, you got to consistently put in that work each and every day. And, the best players in the world, they have this tunnel vision. They're focused no matter what. They can be struggling on the field. But no matter what happens, they're not shaken. And they show up each and every day at the same time, at the same spot, going through the same routine. They believe in themselves. They have a tremendous amount of confidence in themselves to go out and compete at the high level. So that's one of the things too. When I talk to youth athletes, I always tell them, look, I know that it can get frustrating at times. It can be boring at times, but you need to show up each and every day, continue to put in the work and see it through to the end. And I think that's a good reminder for a lot of the youth athletes out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the routine. So what was that routine for some of those guys? Like, say there's a position player that's coming in before a game, 7 o'clock game. What did that routine look like? And where did you come into play for that too?
Yeah, so each individual player is different, right? So some players need a little bit longer to prep themselves and warm themselves up, especially a lot of our older athletes. Some of the younger guys can pretty much roll out of bed and pop out on the field and compete and do very well. So you got to balance on a team. My job is to be the same each and every day. When the players walk into the weight room, they know what to expect. Um, you know, the amount of energy, the attention to detail that they're going to get is consistent each and every day, no matter what is going on in life or on the field. So players would come in, prep themselves, do some mobility, some activation type work, some explosive type work prior to going out to the game. Like I said, each player is different. Some players are really, doing some jumping and med ball throws, really getting their body prepped to go out on the field and to compete. So some players are really calm. Some players are calm. They go through their routine. Some players don't. They don't. A starting pitcher, sometimes they don't talk to anybody. Some starting pitchers are just open and chatty. So, but I think it's important to know each individual player's routine and some of their physical needs that they need to prep and get ready for the game.
Mm-hmm. What about for you? Like, what about your routine? I mean, you're a strength and conditioning coach. You're around this every single day. Do you have a training regimen? Do you stick to a diet? I mean, you've got kids. Life gets crazy.
Yeah,
How
it
do you
does.
approach it yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I try to get as much sleep as I can. At this stage in the game, this point in my life, it's more, I just crush some caffeine and try to stress my body consistently each and every day and go out there. But yeah, since a young age, I've always tried to maintain the consistent training, so to speak. Sprint work's very important. I think, to stay young, to stay fit and athletic. I think sprinting is a big thing. And I think a lot of, adults, after high school, they tend to leave that out. Maybe they go to the gym, walk on a treadmill, do some strength training and lifting. But I think sprint work is a big component, and also explosive work, plyometrics, jumping. If you can't really jump because you have some aches and pains and injuries, maybe you can use a medicine ball and quickly, accelerate that into a wall, or even hop in a pool and do some jumping around in the pool. That would take off some of the stress of the lower body. But I think it's very important to have a routine, consistently, stay physically active, continue to focus on your nutrition as much as possible, continue to sleep well. And then the mindset is another big thing. The having a positive mental attitude, I think, goes an extremely long way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's one thing that I've just experienced and a little bit. So we were just before this, you're like, yeah, I get to ask a lot of the same questions, but it kind of depends on who the audience is. So I hope my audience is kind of like former athletes. So you stop playing and then you're like, all right, man, what's next? Like I'm finding a career. I still want to stay healthy. I want to keep a positive mindset. And one of those things for me has been like almost having something to train for. But I found that when I don't have something to train for, I'm kind of just going through the motions a little bit. Have you experienced that, or like maybe just talk about the difference between, all right, you're training, you have something on the calendar and you're training for it versus just going to the gym every single day. Like that's something that's been on my mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, training for life is kind of what I focus on. I want to be I want to be able to continue to run around and play with my kids and, be able to sprint with them, play various sports, be able to jump and roll around on the ground. So that's kind of what at this stage in the game in my life is what I'm training for. When I was an athlete, I was training for to get a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, drive the ball in the gap a little bit more, score more bases. Um, and then when I was competing in the martial arts too, I wanted to be a little bit faster with my kicks or stronger with my kicks, and not take a beating. But yeah, so, um, but yeah, I think as we go through life, I think our mind shifts on the direction of our training. A lot of older athletes too, they train now to be able to go out and compete and feel good competing, and that's the name of the game, right? So, I think a lot of times too, it's like, look, the reason why we do our strength training or our mobility or our explosive work is to enhance something else that we do. And in the athletes that I work with, it's a sport. So we do our strength training, our conditioning, our mobility to enhance the sport, to keep you on the field longer. And if you're on the field, you're going to help your team. And ultimately, hopefully, that turns into a championship. So at this day and age, I just want to make sure my back feels good and I don't get blindsided by any kids, So, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, but it's consistent, and I push myself. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, consistency. That's one thing that it seems like is a common thread for you. It's like consistency, discipline, almost focusing on the basics. Like you're talking nutrition, sleep. And I don't have kids yet, so it's probably easier for me to get to sleep. Well, I should versus like staying up and watching an episode of a show or something. But it's kind of those basics. Is that fair? Like some of those building blocks and everything?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you got to be really good at the basics. And, I always say, be extremely well at the basics, keep the basics, and then maybe your methods on how you do things are advanced. So
sure,
for example, for training, focusing on the basics, say the basic exercises, but as we go throughout the year, how do we program the basic exercises with sets and repetitions and tempos and rest periods? So those are more advanced methods and strategies.
Okay. How do you build a program, or is that different for? Obviously, that's going to be different for youth athletes, high school athletes, college, and the pro guys who are more advanced. But how do you personally think about building a program, and like where do you start with that for guys?
Yeah. So I like to take a holistic approach on program design, program building. That includes, like you mentioned, strength and conditioning, sleep, sports science, nutrition, athletic training, mental performance, biomechanics. So you take all those different variables, all those different departments that's unique to this individual athlete. Depending on the athlete, is this a young athlete? Is this a minor league player? Or a low-level professional, or is this an elite professional? So you got a variety of different athletes, and they're all going to be programmed slightly differently. For example, if you have a young athlete, college, minor league player, very basic movements. The injury history may not be there. As you move up the levels and you work with some of the elite, the best of the best, there are more injuries associated with staying longer in the game and competing at high levels. So you have to work around those injuries. Certain players like certain movements, certain exercises. Some exercises they don't. They say, don't show me that exercise again. So you got to kind of work with that at the elite levels. But, everybody needs some type of strength training, some type of explosive work, some type of direct isolated core work, mobility and flexibility, very big component. So I try to group all those components into each workout throughout the week. And then you vary different sets and repetitions and tempos over the course of 12 months. So when players are in season, you try to keep the intensity high on their training, but also keeping the volume low so they can go out and compete at their sport. During the off-season months, that is a time where you can increase the amount of volume that you're doing. So add some extra exercises in, some extra sets, some extra repetitions to really build that volume, build that muscle mass during the off-season months. Address any areas of needs. If a player is restricted in certain areas, say around the hips or thoracic spine or shoulder, you can really, really focus on those areas. You have more time. During the season, players are being pulled to do different things. You know, they're watching video of their opponents that they're facing that night. They could be possibly out with certain skill coaches, like working on outfield work. If it's baseball, if you're in the NFL, you could be working with, you know, defensive line coach. It just all depends. So during the season, your time is limited, and you really need to focus on what's most important to do to keep this player strong, keep this player explosive and healthy. That way they can go out and compete. During the off-season months, that's that time to introduce some new exercises, new methods, and add more volume.
Okay, so you're talking about it, and then there's obviously a mental performance coach in the big leagues. Like there's all these position coaches that there's a lot going on, right? I mean, there's so many resources. I feel like, how do you work with all of them? I mean, obviously your time. I guess the question is like, so you have a certain amount of time cut out with them, and then does it all intertwine at a certain point, or do you have to almost work across these different categories, I guess, so that it's not all siloed, so that it all goes together?
Yeah.
You know, how do you do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, all of our departments are tied together. So, I like to look at it as like just a big mesh, piece of mesh. Everybody's kind of intertwined. And so, for example, say if this athlete needs more work with their outfield coach, prior to doing their outfield skill work, they would meet with us, the strength and conditioning department, strength and conditioning coach, and we would work with, say, maybe we're working with like quick hip flips or the ability to cross over and accelerate. So we add that in for like 5 minutes or so. Then they go right into their skill work. Same thing if like you're working with an infielder. Maybe you're doing resisted shuffles, so you can do some resisted shuffles. You know, work with them on the performance aspect of things for 5-10 minutes, and then they go right into their infield skill work with their infield coach. So that's one way to integrate kind of what we do from a performance aspect, performance model into the skill work.
Gotcha. Awesome. So just a little bit more from the mental aspect. What is something that maybe you've seen guys do that's helped them? So maybe before a playoff game or something like that. I mean, they've put in all the work with you and all these other departments, but then once that work's in, or once that work is put in, it's like, all right, now you got to go out and perform in front of a crazy crowd at Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium, whatever it is. Are there a few things that you've seen guys that are the top of that have done to really be best mentally performed as well?
Yeah, great question. And I think a lot has to go back to what you said, that, you know, these players, they've put in the work, they know who they are. So there's a level of confidence that helps when they go out and compete in those big situations, in those big games. You know, I've seen players do some deep breathing work prior to the game, really calm stuff down. I mean, the mental performance department that I worked with the Rays and with the Royals, they did a tremendous job working with our players. And again, I think each player is unique on how they handle those situations, and they do a great job by individualizing these different players and using certain tactics and methods with them. But I've seen the deep breathing. I've seen players watch video of all their successes prior to going out to competing, right on their phone in the weight room. So that's another thing that that sometimes helps. But I think knowing that you put in the work day in and day out, you know who you are, you have a level of confidence to go out there and compete in those tough situations.
It's awesome. Yeah, the breathing, a little bit of the visualization. I feel like that you just brought up. Yeah, just positive reinforcement. That's awesome, Joey. What's I'm just curious. Do you have a highlight of your career so far? I mean, you've worked with a ton of great athletes with the Royals and the Rays, a few playoff runs, I believe, with the Rays. So, is there a highlight of your career thus far that comes to mind?
Wow. I mean, a lot of it is just seeing the players work each and every day, and then them going ahead and having success on the field. I think ultimately that's what we want as coaches, is to be able to work with these players day in and day out. You see all their hard work behind the scenes, and then they go out and compete, and they do well, and they help the team win. So overall, I think that's it. Mike Brasso, the home run against Chapman in the ALDS was extremely epic. The whole situation leading to that event, leading up to it, and then him hitting that home run in San Diego during the division series um, to win the series was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Um, what so and I want to respect your time here, obviously, but if there's somebody who's coming maybe out of school, or they just finished playing sports, like they finished in pro ball or whatever, and they want to become you, like they want to do what you're doing one day, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Yeah. Listen, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there in sports, all kinds of jobs. But I think first and foremost, be a good teammate. Um, Communicate well, show empathy and compassion towards your athletes, towards your coaches and staff members. Read and take courses, learn the science behind what you're doing, and then start getting experience right away. And, I know a lot of teams offer different internship positions or fellow positions now. That wasn't a thing when I first started, but that would be great to kind of get in the door, see if you like that environment in working in pro sports. And then if you do, then possibly that could end up in a job situation. But yeah, I mean, take it one day at a time, learn as much as you can, stay consistent and disciplined in what you're doing. Um, and just focus on having an impact and changing lives
Hmm.
as much as you can every day.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about networking too, right? Like stay consistent with networking.
Mm.
Is there any thoughts that you have on that? Because that word in general sometimes has a negative connotation to it. Like you got to network to get where you want to go. But um, how did you go about that? Maybe, or how would you? Or what kind of advice would you give to people about that?
Yeah, I mean, network as much as you can also, but I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing, if you can, no matter where you are, and I remember being in the minor leagues, I was content in that situation. I focused each and every day of just working with the athletes that I had in front of me. When you do good work, people will notice and people will talk. Word of mouth gets around. And I think that's kind of how you move up the ladder. However, reaching out to different coaches around the world and learning from them is extremely important. And I still to this day try to make that a priority to where I'm able to talk to different coaches from other sports, other backgrounds from all over the world to get some of their advice on different training methods, tactics, and whatever it is. And then I've recently reached out to other people outside of the industry. So that's another good thing too for young coaches that are aspiring to be in professional sports or the college setting to go ahead and reach out to people outside of your industry, of the sports industry, different owners and founders and CEOs of companies, and talk to them about leadership roles and things like that is extremely important.
Yeah. So what have you learned from them? Like just from reaching out to, I mean, is it the business acumen? Is it like building? Because do you have it's your own business as well, right? Like training these youth athletes. Is that accurate? I mean, like,
Mm. Yeah, so
yeah,
I do work with athletes around the country, both in person and remotely. Um, but yeah, a lot is business oriented on how to create, on how to grow, on how to speak. Speaking is huge. If you can get in front of a big audience and speak to a number of youth athletes or a room full of people and to deliver a message is really, really powerful. So I noticed that when I talk to a lot of people outside of just my industry, it comes down to being able to create different things, either create documents or to create products, either digital or, um, just a hands-on product. Um, Speaking, very important, communication. So different things that you don't really get while you're coaching in the sport, so to speak. But learning how to be creative, learning how to write, learning how to speak, that helps my coaching game extremely. Uh, and it's extremely important.
yeah, yeah. So it's like a holistic approach, kind of what you're talking about with everything else: the sleep, nutrition, exercise. That's awesome. All right, Joey. I just have one more question for you, if you don't mind. It just in term a little bit of what you were just talking about. Like, um, do you have a mentor, or are there other coaches that you aspire to be like that you've seen or in the past have relied on? Just curious, like the difference between having a mentor and somebody that can guide you on the way and learning it yourself. Like, is there anybody
Yeah,
that you look to at all?
yeah, great question. I mean, I was extremely fortunate enough to have a great mentor when I started with the Kansas City Royals, Ryan Stoneberg, who's there now. He's been with that organization for over 20 years. He's doing an incredible job, but he really pushed me as a coach. He saw something in me where he can really push me. He stayed on top of me. He didn't let things slide. From documentation to my coaching style, and I'm extremely thankful for the opportunity to work with him, because he really pushed me to be the best version of myself. And I think if I didn't have him, I wouldn't have learned a lot of the attention to detail aspects, and some of my coaching style wouldn't have really come out and shined, if I didn't meet him. So I'm very thankful for him. And then Shea Pierre, another great coach, doing great work up in Canada. He has his own business, but I'm learning from him, from the business side of things, how to be creative and speaking, and how to write, and he's really taught me a tremendous amount of the business side of aspect of running a business.
Love it, love it. Yeah, some of that writing. I see you on Threads and Twitter/X and all that stuff, like putting it out there. I mean, it's
My one
good.
follower, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, it's good. Like, because that's one thing that I've talked a little bit about on here. It's like, yeah, you can spend all day on Twitter, and there's so much crap out there, but there's also a lot of good stuff. Like if you know how to use it for good and to learn things, that's how you should be probably using it. I don't know. So um, anyway, but Joey, all right, man. Well, listen, thanks again so much for doing this. This is awesome, and just hearing about your experience, a little bit about the career. I know you're busy, especially this time of year. Hopefully, pursuing that next opportunity that comes up. So, if people want to check out maybe what you're doing or learn more about the speed schools and everything like that, do you mind just giving a shout out to that for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out. You can follow me on Instagram or message me on Instagram, just at Joey Greany. Again, on X and Facebook also. So I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out and we can talk training.
Awesome. All right, Joey. We'll let you maybe hit a workout in the home gym there. So, thanks a lot. I appreciate
Joe,
it.
thanks for having me. I appreciate you. Thank you.